The U.S. Department of Justice continues to release more and more files in the Jeffrey Epstein case, and we found that if you search the word Cleveland, there are hundreds of references, including to the Browns, the Cleveland Clinic. Dan DeRose is here to explain really what that means.
Yeah, even there's a few references to Channel 19. It's really a bizarre, wide net. And if you want to search, we've given you the link. Go to cleveland19.com. The files contain really everything. There are articles that were written by staff here at Channel 19 that have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They might be articles about maybe the FBI helping an investigation, and yet somehow that ends up into this massive amount of information on Jeffrey Epstein. Here's another example, the Cleveland Clinic. Now, I've asked the clinic for a statement. They've decided that they just want to show that there's really no big connection. Here is an email from a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. It's a 2015 funding letter sent to the Epstein Foundation. Jeffrey Epstein was worth $600 million, so it's reasonable to think that a doctor, especially in the head of Preventative Oncology International, was making a request. He is a professor of surgery, Women's Health Institute, Cleveland Clinic, Lerner College of Medicine, and this was a request sent to the Jeffrey Epstein Foundation simply asking for money. Now, the problem with what the FBI and the DOJ has put out there, they don't explain why any of this is in the file. Here's a conversation between Jeffrey Epstein and a doctor named Bruce Moskowitz, who is not employed at the Cleveland Clinic. But if we get into what they were texting about, Jeffrey Epstein texts this doctor an article from the Cleveland Clinic about this particular procedure. It's pretty benign. And Moskowitz gets this and says, okay. Jeffrey Epstein says, can you find out if Cleveland Clinic really believes, or is this just one more money trick? So really nothing to do with anything criminal at all. Here's an email from Cecile de Jong. She was the first lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands. She wrote an email to Jeffrey Epstein saying, on another note, I wanted to let you know that I have to go back to the Cleveland Clinic early next month for some medical additional issues. Again, nothing really damning, nothing to do with the investigation. Here's one for the Cleveland Browns. This was a petition sent to the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance. They wanted them, this office in New York, the Browns, and more specifically the Cleveland Browns Transportation LLC, address Lou Groza Boulevard in Berea. They're asking this office in New York, if we buy a jet, will we have to pay taxes on it? There's nothing in this petition that says they're buying the jet from Jeffrey Epstein, so we have no idea why this is in the Jeffrey Epstein file or what it has anything to do with. Coming up at 4 o'clock, I'm going to talk about this picture here. There is no explanation, but these two young women here are wearing Bard High School Early College Cleveland t-shirts. It is a school run by the Cleveland Metropolitan School Districts. What, if anything, does this picture have to do with the Jeffrey Epstein case? We'll get into it coming up at 4.
Now your night.